the bowlers to have taken at least 50 Ashes wickets since 1900, only 2 have a better average than Ryan Harris. Similarly, in the same time frame, just 1 has a better strike rate, and that is Mitchell Johnson. While Johnson terrorised England in the Ashes of 2013-14, it was Harris who bowled England captain Alistair Cook with what ESPN Cricinfo called the ball of the century. Sharing the new ball with Johnson during Australia's 5-0 demolition job, Harris has a unique perspective on one of the most devastating Ashes performances of all time. Despite a knee injury that limited his Test career, England batter Kevin Pietersen called Harris the best Australian pace bowler he ever faced. This is From the Ashes, Ryan Harris. Ryan, I think the first thing I like asking people when I'm talking about their Ashes careers, what's your earliest Ashes memory? When do you remember the Ashes being a part of your life, or even being aware of it as being a thing?
Oh, far out. I can't put my finger on it exactly, but I mean, growing up, and my dad wasn't necessarily a cricketer, but we had a lot of sport in our family. They're obviously English background. One of his brothers actually, I think, tried out for Leicester at one stage there, so they're always into sport. But when just as a kid, I remember, wanting to sit up because it was always on reasonably late when it was on in England. So the memories I have are probably more Ashes series in England rather than here. I didn't follow it as much here, but I just remember sitting up late at night and watching Alan Bordery and both of them, Graham Gooch, Mike Gadding, all those just legends, and obviously our guy Shane Warne, and I just remember as a young kid sitting and just watching how good the grounds were in England, the game was, and the commentary. It was just a bit old-fashioned cricket. It was unreal to watch, and it's funny how, as I say that, I don't have a lot of recollection of watching Ashes games here. It was just more about watching it in England. It was just a summer here. The cricket was on. Probably generally I was playing or trying to play some cricket. I was probably young back then, but I remember just watching lots and lots of cricket in England. It used to be so good to watch.
Your dad, I think I'm right in saying, is from Leicester. What was that dynamic like then, growing up? I mean, who did the Harris family want to win the Ashes?
It's always been Australia. My dad was quite young when he moved out. I think he was around 3 or 4 years old. So they moved out like when he was quite young. So him and his brothers, he had a younger brother who's passed away, but who wasn't born. He was born in Australia, and then his 2 other brothers were slightly older. They were only a couple of years older, so they were all sort of instilled in the Australian, lifestyle. Their mum and dad and my grandfather and grandmother. I don't even know why they moved out. They came out in the boat. I think they just felt like they wanted a better life or something different. I'm not exactly sure the reasoning behind it, but no, early doors. I've always had Australia. It's always been Australia who we followed. Even I've never really known any of my family to barrack for England. It's always been Australia, which is quite amazing. But we don't have a lot of ties back then now. I'm sure there's some family that we probably lost touch a bit with. And my father, actually, my dad went back, it was a while ago now. I think it was a year I retired, 2015, because I was supposed to be playing. He booked a trip back there with my father-in-law, actually, and I had to come home, but they still went and had a bit of a drive through, from that, and went to Nottingham. They drove down through all the way down to wherever the next test was. I can't remember where that was, but and went through Leicester and had a good look at it. Dad was a little bit disappointed, I think, with seeing his the old place, but it was nice for him to see that and where they sort of where they lived, and it was good. It was nice.
In the early part of your career, before you played for Australia, there was a moment when you thought you were going to go and play county cricket as a local for Sussex. Was there ever any point where you thought, "Oh, I might become an Englishman, that actually my international future might be with England," or was it always Australia?
Probably not. That was a mucked up situation. I tried using my British passport for a year to try and get a year's cricket, because I always wanted to play county cricket because I had that. there was sort of what we thought was a rule that we could do that, because Mushtaq Ahmed was playing at Sussex, so we thought there might have been a bit of a way to get around that for a year, and in the end, it was close to going through. Then the last minute, literally, Chris Adams was walking out to toss the coin in Hampshire, and the CEO, I can't remember the name of the CEO who was there, but he came running out and said, "No, stop, Ryan can't play. He's the next second overseas. Obviously, you're only allowed one overseas." So that sort of dented that stint. I went over there and trained for a month, had a bit of a pre-season with him, which was fantastic. Met some great people, and then, but yeah, that just sort of went a bit too far. That because I never. The other part of that was as well as that was when I just realised I was relocating. The time I decided to move to Brisbane as well, so it all ended up in a bit of a mess. But there's been a lot of questions, a lot of reports into that saying, "Oh, you almost turned to be English," and I was never going to do that. But basically, almost had to say that I was to play a year of county cricket, which was, as I said, it was a very mucked up situation.
You didn't make your Test debut until you were 30. Was there a time when you thought that ship had sailed?
Not really, because I didn't really move to Brisbane to play international cricket. I moved to win Sheffield Shields and one day trophies, and as I said, Queensland have a knack of just knowing how to win in their sport. It's not like it sounds really, really silly, but the Queensland team I was going to, Andy Bickle was sort of on the back end of his career, and I guess they saw me as a bit of a replacement for him. To when he was sort of, I think he played 1 year or tried to play 1 year coming back from a shoulder op, and it didn't quite work. So I was sort of a replacement for him. So I sort of moved up there just purely to try and win, trophies. And as it happened, again, I think it was 27 or 26, probably 27. Got a bad memory, 28. That when I did that, and then before you knew it, I made my way into the one day team. Played a game where I got called in as a replacement, and Sean Tate didn't come up in the warm-up, so all of a sudden I was playing against South Africa in Hobart, and then I didn't play again for almost 10 or 12 months. So I had an injury in that time as well. But, so I didn't really, even then I had a taste of it, and I felt as though I always thought if I was going to play cricket for Australia, I'd probably end up playing white ball cricket, because I could bowl pretty good, batted okay, definitely lower order, but batted okay, and could field all right. So it was more sort of the format. And then, as I said, once things clicked and I got back fit again, I think I came back from a shoulder, just a clean out of my shoulder. It just sort of kept snowballing and, kept taking wickets, got back into this Australian one-day team. And then from there, that sort of formed in the one-day team. I think I took 2 fifers against Pakistan in a row here, and then we went over to New Zealand and bowled right over there, and it sort of I got picked in that test tour, and then I ended up making my debut in test cricket. So it was 30. I'd love to have been a bit earlier, but I mean, I wouldn't have, even if I was sort of bowling well enough at those times when I was a bit younger, I wouldn't have got it anyway, because you had Gillespie, McGrath and Lee and Bickle and Kasprowicz and all these legends that are great bowlers that were still playing. I mean, McGrath retired in 2009, I think. And a couple of them the year or two before that. I played my first one day with Brett Lee, so he was still going, and that was in 2009. So I wouldn't have played, I don't think, but still, everyone says to represent your country in any format of sport or cricket, it's a dream come true. But to have a bag of grand is a great achievement, and again, something I thought I'd never do.
Over the next half an hour or so, we'll talk about your Ashes career. I think that one thing that might come up often is knees. So I don't know. Maybe we should clear that up straight away.
Well, the knee, it was only the knee. Everyone keeps saying knees. It was only my right knee.
Okay.
That was the reason that was the ending. That ended my career. I had a dodgy knee that it goes back to when I was in high school. I had a knee operation. I tore a meniscus when I was fielding. I was only young, 17. I think I was playing second grade, and I fielded the ball. And I had a sort of decent chunk of meniscus repaired, and I had to sort of go quiet for probably about 6 to 8 months while it healed and to sort of worked its way back in. And then I reckon about 4 months in, it started feeling all right, and I took a big what we call a hanger of AFL footy up someone's back at school, and it ripped it again. And in the end, the doc took out a decent chunk because it was not ideal, but it wasn't going to heal again. So fast forward, what's that? Probably 15 years, 15 years. The area that ended up causing me to retire was that area where it was over time. It just, because of the meniscus wasn't there, it just kept wearing away. And the day at Kent, when I didn't go to the West Indies because my wife was having a baby, so I missed that tour. So I got myself unbelievably fit. I was the fittest I'd ever been in my career, and then went over and had a couple of training sessions and was bowling well before I left, bowled a fair bit, and got to that game in Kent, and there was a ball that I bowled that I felt a bit of a click in my knee. And I'd had a lot of different cracks and clunks and things in my knee, but this just felt a little bit different. It was sort of the inside of my knee, the joint. And I sort of went off and saw the physio, Alex Contouras, who looked after me so well, and it pointed me in the right direction of great medical advice. He just did a couple of knee tests that he'd done before, and I couldn't sort of get the pain. So I thought, maybe it's okay. And I went back out and bowled. I actually bowled absolute junk up until then. I went back out and finally worked out, because I hadn't bowled in a game for a while, that I bowled pretty well for the last 6 overs. The game finished, and then I went off to London to get a scan on my knee, and the boys then I met them back in Essex, and I had to play that game to try and play the first test because I'd been out of it for a while, and in the end we got the scan back in my knee. I actually cracked the top of my tibia, so I had a bit of pain there, but it wasn't anything. In at that period of time, even when I bowled on it, wasn't sort of anything worse than I had before. But as the days went on, and I tried to bowl the morning of that second tour game at Essex, and I couldn't do it. And once we got the results back, we worked out why. So that was the reason why. That was my troublesome knee through my whole career. I had it through probably through most of my all my test career, because I had it sort of the second year I moved to Queensland, but it was manageable. There were times where I'd bowl on the day's play and it'd swell up, and it was a bit of a novelty actually that I'd go to obviously after a day's play we have a team room at a hotel where we go in and do recovery and physio, and every now and then the doctor would come in and have to withdraw some fluid out of my knee. It became a bit of a novelty to the boys to come and watch and see how much they could get out, just to free it up, and it was amazing how it just freed up. So. So it was just a thing that I managed over the years. And to be honest, what happened that day in Kent could have happened 3-4 years before, but it just didn't. So it was disappointing because of the training and hard work I had done to get to that Ashes series, and for it to go then after being the best shape of my life, that was probably the most disappointing thing.
Your first taste of Ashes cricket came in that 2010-11 series when England won. And, that was a bit of an Australian team in transition and a very, very strong England team. What are your memories of that series as a first taste of Ashes cricket?
We couldn't get England out. The memory I have, it was phenomenal. I also got injured in that series as well. I missed the first test, where I think we bowled England out quite cheaply, and then they batted in the second innings, won for 510 or something like that.
Yeah. Alistair Cook.
Yeah, that's right, a double hundred. I missed that game. I played in Adelaide, where that was just a nightmare. England were just relentless. We had a good team, but there was a little bit of transition in there. But the recollection of that is we just couldn't get you guys out. I mean, Cookie was phenomenal as he was through his whole career, but that series we just couldn't get him. Trotty was unbelievable. Ian Bell, KP, we could not. We kept, revisiting plans and talking about what are we doing, and we were doing everything pretty right. It just they were better, way better, and obviously ended up coming out on top. So, but I ended up breaking my ankle running into bowl in the Boxing Day Test. That was the other shocking thing that I had as well. So. I ended up missing the last test with that series as well. But yeah, just that was Yeah, just remember walking in change rooms at breaks and just thinking, what do we have to do to get these blokes out? Because they scored so many runs, and then bowled really well. Jimmy bowled really well. They all bowled really well as well.
But you had success. I mean, you took 9 wickets at the WACA to level the series, so you'd had a taste of Ash's success personally.
Bowls to Pryor, who is caught in the gully by Hussey. The ball bounced on him. Pryor looks quizzically at the pitch. It took the splice of the bat and just lobbed, and a very good catch by a diving Hussey to his right. And Australia, well, it's been obvious since yesterday evening that they were going to win. And 5 wickets for Ryan Harris, who has really established himself in this Australia side now after his knee injury.
Yeah, I mean that was nice to be able to bounce back, and especially after Adelaide, and we thought we knew that we once we got over that Adelaide disappointment, we thought going to Perth, we go again coming to a place it's a little bit different. The conditions are here a bit different here. They're a bit different to the Gabba. Gabba's a bit more slower bounce, where here it's fast bounce, and so we thought we'd have a chance if we can get there, play well there, and then get it back on an even keel. Then we going into Melbourne, which we hadn't lost a lot of Boxing Day tests, would be a massive chance. But again, we did well here, and we thought the momentum. We managed to crack the armour that in their batting, and we thought we had a bit more momentum going into Melbourne, but they just did it again. They were just too good.
In 10-11, what did you know? What was your personal relationship with Mitchell Johnson, and what did you see him go through in that series?
Just remind me. That was the time, I guess, where he was struggling with his rhythm, I think.
Yeah,
and,
that's right.
And he was. I think for the first time in his career, was probably challenged with what he was trying to do, and the ball wasn't coming anywhere near what he would have liked, and just probably, I guess he called it just form. He just, and then I guess mentally, I reckon he I haven't spoken to him for a long time about it. Maybe just started second guessing himself as well, and what he was doing. And then, I mean, that happens unfortunately in this when there's so much pressure on. He's in there to do what he was in there to do, basically what he did in the next series, 13-14 in Australia, to go in and intimidate and bowl fast, and he couldn't quite get that. And again, the way that England were batting, they handled him, and he probably wasn't at the top pace that he wanted to be at, and maybe his body was a little bit sore as well, and then I think not long after that, I think he ended up doing a tendon in his toe, which in South Africa, which was almost came at a really good time for him, because it just gave him some time out of the game. He just needed some time out of the game. He was struggling with a couple of things, and he was able to get away for, I think it was for about 9 months, and with this injury and just refresh. And that would have been, I think, 11-12. I think that may have happened because he came back in time for 13-14, because he missed the 13 Ashes in England because they were back to back that year. So. Yeah, look, I mean, I've probably never really asked him directly, but he sort of touched on it. The confidence in himself, he's probably second guessed, which he never really probably did in his whole career.
You mentioned that 2013 Ashes in the UK, because there was obviously a time there was a bit of turmoil around the Australian team. They had a bad Champions Trophy. Before that, there was the tour of India that didn't go well. 2-0 down after the first 2 tests. There was an incident between David Warner and Joe Root in a bar. All those things. But when Darren Lehmann came in as coach, even though so many things were going against you, did you feel like a bit of a corner had been turned, even if it wasn't necessarily reflected in the series scoreline, which ended up being 3-0 to England?
Yeah, the dynamic definitely changed. I mean, Mickey Arthur was, and that's the other part, we had a change of coach as well, a week out from the first test. So, and I was actually on that Australia A tour getting some overs and games under my belt, which Darren was coach of. So, I mean, it was, we didn't sort of expect that to happen, I guess. It sort of surprised, well, I mean, the senior group, maybe the leadership group may have had an inkling that was going on, but that didn't trickle down to the rest of the boys. So, that after the disappointment of the Champions Trophy, we had some guys come back from that. I think Phil Hughes and Matthew Wade, they came literally that night, I think after losing that last game and what needed to come and get some time in the middle and some game time with the Red Bull. So, but once all that happened, I remember it's like it was yesterday where Darren disappeared for a couple of hours and we were like, well, where's the coach? Where is he gone? And that was when Brad Haddon, who he was pretty good at working things out. He thinks a bit different about different things. He sort of said to me, I reckon Buff's going to coach us, be coach by the end of the day. But once he said that, a few of us started looking around and there was, we had James Sutherland had come to the ground. I think Pat Howard, who was the high performance manager. So we all looked around and thought something's going on here. And it did. Unfortunately for Mickey, he sort of, got told, I think, the next morning that he was no longer the coach and Darren was appointed straight away. And the first thing it was the day after the game, I think. Again, it was at Taunton, and we actually no, it might have been, where was that game? Oh no, it was at Gloucester, I think. We went gone straight on the bus the next morning. Basically said goodbye to Mickey because he wasn't coming with us, and then we went to Somerset. We got into the hotel, and Buff had this massive meeting, and it was just about bringing we've got to be together. We've got to be in this together. Mentality, and he did. He just brought a bit of fun to it. Buff's a bit of a larrikin. He was well respected by majority of the team. He played with a few of the guys, Michael Clark, Shane Watson. He played with a few of these guys, so they sort of knew what his mantra was, and it was all about having fun, playing for your country, and playing hard but fair. That was sort of the change of feeling that he brought into the group. I mean, I remember the first thing he did is we had a heap of team values that Mickey had done up, and it all started with, I will do this, I will do that. And he just basically flicked that straight away and just said, we, changed the I to we. And it was all about us together, not just individual. We're always obviously striving for individual success, and we have individual roles in the team, but it was all about what am I going to do, or what are we going to do for each other? And that was a massive turning point. I think that brought the group a lot closer together.
The TMS Podcast from BBC Radio 5 Live.
Obviously, there'd been a lot of upheaval, and you were against a very good and settled England team, and you found yourselves 2-0 down. You didn't play in the first test at Trent Bridge, but then you came in for the second test. The first test was close, and then England won the second test quite convincingly. So you're 2-0 down after two, but actually over the course of the remaining three test matches, there was clear sort of signs of improvement for the Australia team. You probably would have won at Old Trafford had it not rained. Durham was close again, and then there was a funny sort of draw at the end of the over when it was affected by the weather. You only played 4 test matches. You took 24 wickets. You were Australia's player of the series.
And in comes Harris again. Oh, and that is out.
That is out.
He nibbled at that one. There was no appeal. It was a very obvious one off the outside edge. He just pushed with his bat away from his pal Anderson. It was taken there by Haddin. And so 313 for 9. And
that's the 5th wicket for Harris this morning.
Harris's 5th wicket, which is terrific. And he really has, hasn't he? He's worked his heart out, and it was a brilliant choice to bring him in for this test match. He's someone who doesn't really survive a full 5-test series. They've got to bring him in when they think he's right. It's been perfect for him here, and really he's been responsible for a really not a very good England batting display.
Both personally and from a team point of view, because you're in that really unusual situation where you're going to go and play an Ashes straight away again back in Australia. Did you feel that actually, look, we've just lost 3-0 and that is a heavy defeat. I think it's one of the heaviest defeats Australia has suffered in a long time. But were you actually taking a weird optimism and confidence back to Australia because of what you'd done in the second part of that series?
That's exactly spot on. The mentality we had. Where, again, you look at it on paper, and as you said, it's probably one of the worst results. But we thought we were way closer than that. Obviously, it got close at Trent Bridge, probably closer than it probably should have. We had young Ashton Agar, making those runs. Obviously, we got pretty well beat at Lords. But then the next 3 tests, we felt as though we were really, really close. We'd had, the game almost on toast a few times. But then, I think at Durham, we were 1 for 160, chasing 200 and maybe 60 or 250 or whatever it was. And then Brody came on and lit it up and took, 4 or 5 quick wickets. It was just so we sort of let ourselves down. We felt in hours of games or sessions of games that lost us that series. And then as you say, we get to Old Trafford. We thought we were on track there. Then the weather came, but so we what you say there, we felt we were really close, although it was 3-0. So when we got back on the plane, we left there really hungry. The Test boys did, and knowing that was coming straight back, it was a great opportunity for us to, I guess revisit, and go back over what had happened, the way we played, our plans. Obviously, would change when they come to Australia a little bit with the conditions, but we sat down and did a lot of research around it together. One thing that was the return of Mitchell Johnson, because he came back in that one-day series before everyone else flew back.
You played 9 tests in a row as well, so the body must have been holding up quite well.
Yeah. I mean, it had its challenges. The knee was swelling up a little bit at times, but you look back at that and it was a great achievement, to be able to do that. And I think from there on, that's the other part of that, which is from the Ashes, we went straight to South Africa and played another 3 tests over there, and we ended up winning and became number 1 in the world. That was our sort of goal, long-term goal. But I guess we were lucky. We with that, a lot of the games didn't go 5 days. So, when you're taking wickets and doing what Mitchell does or did, and you're able to get off your feet and have that extra day's rest, it was a massive help, especially for me, who my body was getting a bit sore and tired at times, and the knee was sort of growling a bit. So having that extra time off was definitely a help, and that allowed us to get through. I think we had the same team 5 tests in a row, which I don't know when the last time that's happened. It doesn't happen very often.
You talked about, I think it's quite a famous conversation, actually. I think it's been mentioned before that Michael Clarke took you fast bowlers aside and said, you're the guys that are going to win this series for us. But you mentioned specifically about targeting Alistair Cook as the England captain and someone who'd scored a lot of runs in 2010-11.
Harris bustles in, bowls to him. Oh, he's caught behind. It's wide. He flashed at it and he's walked. The umpire didn't give him out. He walked off. And that's a big wicket, my word. Poor shot, at least from this angle. It did look very wide indeed. And he reached for it. It was pushed across him. And I mean, I have to say, the replay possibly makes it look even worse. And Haddin took that to his left in front of first slip. And it's another wicket for Harris. He's taken both so far. The openers are gone. England lead by 10. They're effectively 10 for 2, with Cook out for 22.
What does targeting a particular batter look like? Because naturally, you want to get everyone out and you want to knock everyone over cheaply. So what's the difference?
It was just trying to stop him from not giving anything to score, and being open to and communication around what period of the game we're in, or but just having really good plans to him and stop him from scoring, and then making sure that we could put pressure on. So again, it was Pete Sill and I to be able to come in and not let him score, and then Mitchell will be able to come in and bounce him or do whatever he had to do. And obviously that was a plan to most of the players, as you say, but we just sort of felt, again, from that 2010-11, how dominant he was. If we could cut that down, then again, they wouldn't have that platform and that foundation that he was so good at setting. So yeah, you're right. We had definitely great plans for all the other players as well, but again, we just felt as though he was a big player for them, and again, if we cut that off, someone else is going to have to do it under pressure in the conditions that, the tour before they were pretty good in, but we didn't have Mitch bowling like that, in that last tour, and we were able to build really good pressure around Alistair, but then most of their batters as well.
First Test match, the cauldron of the Gabba, obviously a place that you know really well from having your time with Queensland. Australia 295 all out, having been 132 for 6. Runs from Brad Haddin and Mitchell Johnson. That would become a theme of the series. England had got to 82 for 2 and then were 136 all out in the first innings, with the first, flash of what Mitchell Johnson was going to do. And Australia went on to win the Test match by 381 runs. England were blown away in the second innings. One that was made famous for Michael Clarke's altercation, the words that he said to James Anderson, words that I can't repeat on a podcast on the BBC. But the aggression that you showed, and particularly the aggression that Michael showed, and maybe showing the Australian public a side to him that they hadn't seen before. What did that show to England and to the supporters actually of what this team was capable of when you hadn't tasted Ashes success for quite a long time?
Yeah, I mean that was probably surprised a few of the players as well. Just he was never really. I didn't know Michael to be sort of that. He was very vocal around the team, but not necessarily towards opposition players like that. And I think Jimmy got under the skin of most players at times. And I think I'm just trying to think of that scenario. George Bailey must have said, I can't remember. I think he told me one day, but he said something, but it was more of a.
So George Bailey was fielding it. He was at short leg. Jimmy Anderson was batting and Mitchell Johnson was bowling, and Michael Clarke comes to step in between Bailey and Anderson.
Because Jimmy stepped away. He was about to face up, and then Jimmy stepped away back to short leg and started talking to George. He got quite close to him, and I think I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think George said it wasn't a go at him. It was something. Well, what he thought was he was trying to be complimentary, like he's bowling fast, so make sure you protect yourself, or whatever. I don't even know what it was, but it was. I don't think it was an absolute just a shot at Jimmy. It just got misconstrued because what did happen that afternoon, I remember that quite clearly as well, is the crowd, everyone just got on the back of what we were doing, and the crowd it was so loud at the Gabba. It was just phenomenal because of what Mitchell had been just sort of done. So I'm not sure, obviously I think Jimmy misunderstood what was said. And then obviously, Michael came in, and again, I'm away, I'm mid-off, I think I was. I might have been fine leg, so I didn't know exactly what was going on, but I guess, it was how we wanted to play that way. We wanted to be aggressive, but not. I don't think there was a lot of sledging. I don't recall, and you might have to speak to English players about that. I don't think there was a lot of sledging going on. It was more. There would have been a couple of words here and there, but we didn't go in. We wanted to be aggressive, but we didn't have a plan to go in and say, right, we're going to go hard at Cookie with verbal stuff, or we're going to go. There were players that we actually sat back and went, like KP, for instance, you wouldn't chat to him. You just don't talk to him when he bats because it switches him on and he gets into the contest. So, sometimes he would come in and like to talk, but we just said, no, we're not talking. So we didn't exactly have that. It was just, we just wanted to be aggressive. If anything popped up like that, which was, again, it was probably misconstrued a little bit that Michael, I think, came into whatever, said what he wanted to do, and then it just got caught on the mic and that was it. And again, we sort of like, saw him. I think he pointed the finger that from afar. It was just like, mate, just hurry up and face up. But then when we heard the words, everyone was like, "Oh, that's cool." That Michael showing what he could, we knew he was in it with us, obviously, being the captain. But that was a little bit of a shock. But I mean, that was just like, right, we're on here and we're going to do everything that we can, not try and break his arm, but. We're in a fight here, and we're going to back him up as well as much as he was backing us up.
You won that Test match, and afterwards, David Warner made some comments about Jonathan Trott, and Jonathan Trott eventually left the tour, and David Warner actually subsequently apologised for what he said because Warner himself accepted that he'd probably overstepped the line because of what Jonathan Trott was going through. But the reason I raised that is because after what had happened at the Gabba, did you feel like you had England on the run already?
We felt if Mitch could do that and we bowled like that, we definitely put pressure on him. I don't think we walked away from there thinking that we were definitely on top of England. I mean, as you say, our batting probably wasn't up to scratch in a couple of those games, and as with Hads and Mitch, who scored runs, very helpful runs in the middle order, lower order. At times, especially in that game. But we knew that if we could keep the pressure on and bowl as we did, then we thought we'd, no doubt, put them under pressure. But we definitely didn't walk away from knowing how they had played previously, that it could happen again, that they could come out and take time to regroup and, come out and bat well. And so that was spoken about. Let's enjoy this and reassess and where we're at, but again, if we kept bowling like we did, then we're gonna put them under huge pressure. So, I don't think you ever walk away in a Test series like that, even though it was convincing in the end. You never think, we've got them here. We're going to walk you through the next 2 or 3 or 4. We never did that. we always, we always kept each other in check to make sure that we're, concentrating, not looking, weren't looking too far ahead, and making sure we knew what our role was, and we executed and played our role.
But you did bowl like that again, and Mitchell Johnson did bowl like that again, and this time on quite a slow Adelaide pitch. He took 7 for 40 in the second test. Australia won by 218 runs. And by this stage, it's becoming obvious that Mitchell Johnson is going to become a huge factor and eventually almost a deciding factor in the series. So the thing I want to ask you is, what was it like? What was it like opening the bowling with him? Did you talk much? Were you mates? You said you fielded at mid-off quite a lot. What were those conversations like?
Yeah, that we were really tight. We still are. I still speak to Mitch probably more than Pete. But in the Tour of England, the back end, Mitch came to that sort of. So we sort of started creating a bond. And I'd played with him earlier as well. So, and Pete Siddler played a lot with him. So we were really, really tight. And as I said, by going back to Brisbane before that first test, after Michael spoke to us, we talk a lot about and spent a lot of time together. It was sort of bowlers and then batters that do their own thing, and bowlers.
Always the way.
Yeah, exactly. The quicks and Nath Lyon, we'd hang out a lot. So we didn't talk cricket all the time. We had similar interests in cars and just different things. We had similar interests, so it was easy for us to get on. But when it came to the cricket stuff, we communicated so well. If I wasn't mid-on, mid-off to Pete or to Mitch, then they were the same with me. We'd always be communicating on what our plan was, and it was just it was sort of a team within a team. We did talk to the other guys a little bit, but we were just so focused on what we had to do. But as I said before, standing at mid-on, mid-off, I was down at mid fine leg a couple of times when I was bowling. I took a couple of catches that. The ball came to me so fast. When you're playing in stadiums like that, especially Adelaide, you've got to try and pick the ball up, and it was coming so fast. But being next to him and watching, and he was just so determined and so clear on what he was doing. As I said, it was quite an amazing thing to watch and to see how he was getting wickets, whether it was with a short ball and a full ball hitting the stumps. It was just working. We took some really good catches. Our Corden took some really good catches in that as well in that series. That really helped. But it was the old traditional set him up. So he bowled a short one, then pitch it up, or vice versa. It was just whatever he did, it just worked. And then, as I said, Pete and I we weren't trying to bowl fast. We were just trying to do what we do best, and as I said, we picked up a few wickets for it because I know they were coming after us because they couldn't get Mitch away. So, that was the sort of chat we were having. We just, as I said, Pete Siddle and I just knew what we had to do in our role.
What was Mitchell like away from cricket during that series? How did he take it in his stride? Because I think I'm right in saying he's got quite a lot of interests outside of the game as well. I don't think cricket's necessarily the be-all and end-all to him. So how was he? How was he in the dressing room? Did he get away? Did he know he was bowling the speed of light? I mean, we had the moustache that he smiled through when he looked particularly sinister. How did all that sit with him?
I think, again, you're spot on when you said that. Obviously, he had that big break, which I think made him realise that cricket wasn't the only thing. He did have, again, he liked cars. He had a heap of different interests. He had business interests outside, and I think just trying to remember how he had a young daughter by then. I think Rubika was only quite young then, so that was.
I'm going to ask you about that in a second because I think that's important. But keep going.
He had a bit of a distraction around that. I'm pretty sure she was there then. I think she would have been only very young, but so family. I think he just sort of worked out that putting everything into cricket wasn't healthy for him, and he once he'd had that time off, spent time with family back home in Perth, and again worked that out. He came back refreshed. During the series, he was just a normal bloke. We're all having fun. Obviously, we're playing some good cricket. There was a massive hype around, as it is with Ashes series here and obviously in England. But he being around him was great. Being around the whole squad, everyone got on so well. But again, he wasn't. I don't know. It's hard to explain. He just wasn't all out cricket. You could just see that he worked out what it was make him happy, or the combination that he needed to, to make him play good cricket and be where he needed to be with his body, with his game, and then he could switch off. Whereas before he probably couldn't do that.
You mentioned Mitchell's daughter. I think that's important because in 10-11 he was obviously taunted by a song from the Barmy Army, which he knew was coming. He bowls to the left, he bowls to the right. And his counter to that was to sing in his head, "Let It Go" from Frozen.
There you go.
Did you know that?
Probably did. I've got a very bad memory, but I don't recall that happening. But that, again, he'd obviously spent time with, whether it be psychologists or whoever it was, to find a way to combat that, because that did hurt him. That did get to him, and even he would say now, I reckon, that that was because he was so intense in it that every little thing that someone would say about him, and he's a fiery he was pretty fiery as well, that he just let it get to him, and then that would detract from what he was trying to do on the ground. To he'd be thinking about all that sort of stuff. So that's the thing. I do remember that. Quite a funny way to get over it, but then it worked.
And he certainly did let it go. The third test then at the Wacker, a ground where you'd had Ashes success previously. The Ashes is there to be won on this occasion. And what an occasion from an Australia point of view. George Bailey takes 28 off one James Anderson over. England are set an unfathomable 504 just to save the test and to save the Ashes. And then, from your point of view, the delivery to Alistair Cook. And the first ball that Cricinfo have called the ball of the century, and when you look at replays, it almost seems to swing twice. Swings into him, hits the surface, swings away from him, kisses the top of the off stump. One of the great balls.
Well, here we go then, the start of England's innings. Oh, he bowled him first ball. Cook's gone. Harris is through him. England are 0 for 1, and Australia are jubilant. Cook's 100th Test match is over, and so surely are England's hopes of retaining the Ashes. Off he goes. England are 0 for 1. Would you believe it?
I was just thinking then, Simon, the worst possible start here would be to lose early wickets. But that there swung in, straight, and just hit the top of off stump. It was not a bad first ball to get, but just when you think it can't get any worse for England, Alistair Cook goes first ball.
That looked an absolute beauty first up from Harris. No wonder there was that celebration.
Could be over before lunch.
Wonderful delivery first up to Cook. He's clipping the top of off stump.
What is your memory of that?
Yeah, that was it was a great. A lot of people have come to me and they'd asked that question: how do you swing the ball after it bounces? It's like, that's because you don't. You just. All I tried to do was set the seam up, and then hopefully it would swing. Sometimes it would, sometimes it wouldn't. So that was interesting. Just a quick story around that. I mean, that day was an amazing day, because I remember a lot of us was so nervous, knowing what that day could bring. I'm pretty sure it was that day it finished. It might have been the next morning, but one of those mornings where I'd woken up quite early, and not slept a lot that night, and I never really had a lot of dramas doing that, because obviously I bowled a lot of overs. But I went down to the team room, which we had at about 5:30, thinking I'd get an early coffee, and there was like seven or eight players down there, because they were so nervous as well on what we were about to achieve potentially. But going back to that ball, I think that one was the next day. We finished the next day. But going back to that ball, it was interesting because I was at that point when my body was hurting quite a bit, and from first innings to second innings, and I didn't think I took the first over very often. For some reason, I was doing it this time, and I remember running into bowl with no word of a lie. And I only told this story the other day, that my body was that sore, and halfway through or 3/4 way through my run up, the voice in my head just said stop, because because again, the reason why I wasn't bowling the first over, because the first few balls of the over I'd float up and they'd be hit, so I'd go for 6, 8, 10, if not worse. So the decision, I don't even know why it was, but anyway, so 3/4 way through I was like stop, and I didn't. I don't know why I didn't. and then that came out. It came out. It just felt good. And obviously, yeah, it sort of swung away and then, nipped away, and the rest is history. But I mean, again, it was to the start of that innings. We knew England could bat well. I think Stokes got 100 in that innings as well. I think who else? Matt Pryor, I think, batted really well in that innings as well, and in that second innings. So to be able to get Cookie out the way early, that was just another big bonus to be able to do that, because we knew what he was capable of. But I look back at it, and it's funny. I'm in Perth now because we've got a Sheffield Shield game tomorrow, and I didn't do it this time, but I came here last year, and the guys I coach, give me a bit of stick about it. But I actually went and put a ball on the spot where I mucked around where it pitched. They enjoyed that. So it's always nice coming back to it. Obviously, the WACA's now not an international venue, but it's always nice coming back to it. Having that success, that ball a little bit, but it's more about it's where we won the Ashes, and that's the important thing to me.
Cricinfo called it the ball of the century. How often do you get asked about it? How often it must come up quite a lot.
Every year, my birthday was a few weeks ago. It comes up, and there's people posted. It's always a reminder. And now my kids are getting up. My little boy especially gets friends at school that see it, and they ask him about it. He has no clue. He's not really into cricket just yet, but it's a nice thing. Ball of the century, again, it's what people want to label it. It's not for me. It's it was my job, and that's what I had to do. And again, you always want to try and bowl beautiful, nice balls like that. But again, I felt as though I bowled a few other good ones in my career as well. But obviously that one keeps getting brought up again, which is it's a nice sort of little reminder on that such an important Test match that we were playing that day.
You talked about the nerves and how important it was to win back the Ashes, and you've done it. I think it was the first time in more than 1,500 days that Australia could say they were the Ashes holders. What were the celebrations like?
Yeah, again, I got reminded of, I wrote a stupid tweet when I was in Perth after having a few beers about the casino, which I got reminded of only yesterday. Again, my players brought that up, but we did celebrate it pretty well. I remember we ended up, Shane Warne, I think, was going to fly out back to Melbourne that night, and he ended up staying, and we ended up having a party in his villa, which was quite cool.
What's that like?
It was brilliant. It was unreal. We had everyone there. There was only, with the way our test series, a lot of the girls didn't come to Perth because it was too far away, and so we had a couple of girls there, but it was just more the boys, and then we just the players and staff, and we had a great celebration. But obviously, again, once we got through that, it was amazing how we enjoyed ourselves. But once we got on the plane the next day, got to Melbourne, it was like, right, how are we going to win this 5-0? That was the thing we started thinking about. We're not going to give up an inch here. We're going to do this the way we want to do it. And again, they had a really good night. But then the focus turned pretty quickly once we hit Melbourne.
You go to Sydney 4-0 up, the chance to win 5-0, and you personally, you save your best to the last. You take 8 wickets in the match, including the last wicket that of Boyd Rankin. What was that like for you personally, to put in that performance when the whitewash is on the line, and to have that moment, that winning moment?
To be honest with you, I don't reckon I knew I'd taken Pfeiffer in that inning. I don't think I'd sort of, because that was it. We'd sort of, that was quite an interesting. I think England had probably, I've checked out, I think we won in 2 and a bit days, was it? Or
yeah, it was very quick, and lots of debutantes in that game, and all sorts, lots of upheaval.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I guess for me it was, just trying to think back. It was a while ago, obviously, but it was more about what we've just achieved. It wasn't even. I think it probably wasn't until actually after, when I got presented with the man of the match, that I actually realised I'd taken 5. So in the innings, I think it was. So again, it was just all about what we just achieved as a team was amazing, and then how are we going to celebrate? That was the best thing. But again, I think as you said, England had changed their team quite a lot by then. There was a little bit of upheaval, as you say, which seems to be. When teams come to Australia sometimes, especially the Ashes, it's been, happens a couple of times, and vice versa. When we go there, we've, players retire or coaches, in their tenure. But I remember it just being a great time. We had all our families in the round there as well, which was great. It was obviously because it was a New Year's test that that we have the families around too. So I just remember being a great family time, and then we had time with the team just to soak it all up and really enjoy each other's company and sort of look back and what we just achieved.
You sang the team song on the pitch straight away. That doesn't happen very often.
That flashed up on telly the other day. I totally forgot about that. That was really unusual. I don't know. I think Lino, who leads it, we just wanted to take in again because it was pretty busy. The crowd was unreal. It was loud, and I think it was just let's just take it in here and because we never did that the whole time there. It was all about doing it later, and but it was a good little touch. It was just it was a unique thing of what we just achieved.
We talked about how you had got through those 9 consecutive Ashes tests and went on to play in South Africa, where Australia won, and you played a crucial role in that. I think you were struggling to walk but still able to bowl, and then you went off and had more knee surgery, and you only played a handful more test matches after that South Africa series. You wanted to play in the 2015 Ashes, but as we've touched about, your knee broke down again. You had the cracked tibia. How did that feel, knowing that you weren't going to have another crack at England?
Yeah, I mean, it was shattering at the time. It all happened really quickly. I mean, that after that South African, the reason I kept pushing through that is, I was definitely, we were all in pain. I think that was probably the hardest test match that I'd ever played, and a few have said the same. I think we fielded for 160 overs because South Africa was so good at defending. But we got through that, and I knew at the end of that, the reason I kept going, I knew at the end of that I was having surgery on my knee, so it was all going to be cleaned out and fixed, and everything going to be scraped away. So we pushed through. We're all sore, no doubt about that. But we're lucky we got the result in the end because that would have felt like a loss, or that would have been a draw. So we're lucky to get through. As I said, that sort of put us in number 1 spot in the world. But I think I only played maybe 3 or 4 more tests. I think it was against India. I believe that was the last series I played. And as I said, I missed the West Indies because of the birth of our first child. And for me, it was probably, if I can get to England and get through and play well, that might have been a good time to retire. That was sort of in the back of my mind. But then I thought, well, if you go well and you feel like you're going good, then maybe it might be better to retire at home. And I think it was New Zealand. I think that the tour after, so I was definitely starting to think more about it. I probably saw myself trying to play a bit more state cricket, if I was good enough to play franchise cricket. But I mean, as I said, the shape I was in, I thought I could definitely, again, play some sort of cricket, but it was probably, I knew the other thing about that is we had some good guys coming through as well. We had Paddy Cummins and Stark was playing.
I was going to ask you, do you know who replaced you in the squad when you pulled out of the 2015 tour? When you were,
he's never thanked me for that either. But that was Paddy. I remember that. That was South Africa, wasn't it? Firstly, it was South Africa. I came home from the South African tour a couple of years before that, and then he replaced me. Then in that tour, you're right.
Yeah, so a bit of a passing of the torch almost to some younger guys.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I just knew I was, again, my knee was getting closer. I just knew that I could, with the surgery that I was having done to it. The actual surgery I had after South Africa is the reason why it went, because it allowed my knee to be a bit more freely and move freely, and it actually it got me back to straightening my leg, which was then putting pressure on the damage area, which wasn't happening because I couldn't bend my legs. I straightened my legs. So the surgery was great because it relieved a lot of pain, a lot of stuff, but then it actually,
no good for fast bowling.
Yeah, it contributed to, putting my knee back into a normal place and then damaging it. So, look, definitely disappointed. I remember it was such a hard decision. Like, I had a surgeon that had done all the work on it, for a number of years, tried a couple of different techniques and got me going. He knew the importance of trying to get as much out of me as possible. So when it happened, I just remember sitting down or going back to the hotel. I was shattered, obviously, when I got the results. I sort of knew, and then we rang the surgeon, and he said, "Look, we've done as much as we can. I can fix it again, but it's just going to go again because you've got no protection on it. And so when he said that, because I know that he would, or I did know that he would do everything he could to get me out there. But when he said that, that was like, that's it. I'm done. I can't do it. I just, and that was when, I was a blubbering mess. I was, I left the ground and went back to the hotel, and then, that night everyone came back. Everyone was great. Everyone came down and got around me. But I just remember sitting down with Mitch and Pete, and I said to them, I reckon I can do it again. I just reckon I can do it. And they said, you've spoken to the surgeon. He's obviously told you probably not. And then they said to me, which really got me, I used to have to take quite a number of, Voltarens or Panaline Forts. And I remember Mitch saying that, mate, I've seen what you have to take to bowl and play. You can't keep doing that because it's going to rip your stomach apart. You're going to have, longer term issues. And I was at that point where every time I bowled, I was in a lot of pain, but I did it because I wanted to. And I remember him saying that, and I was like, and Pete was the same. Pete Siddle said, that's not great to be going through that. And so I had a bit more of a think about it. I spoke to my wife and my brother and my dad, and I had no other option. I had to pull a pin, and reluctant as I was still, I look back at it and I played 27 tests more than I thought I was going to play. I wish I had been 50 or 70, but as I said at the beginning of the conversation, I never ever thought if I was ever going to play for Australia, it probably wasn't going to be in red ball cricket, and I did it 27 times. So it was a decision. Again, it was. I actually went back to the surgeon again, and I just said, "You're 100% sure?" And he said, "Look, we can try and have a go at it, but it's going to be long." And he basically said it. That was it. So once I got that sort of confirmation, that was it.
I think there's a bit of symmetry there, isn't there? That actually it was a conversation with the two guys that you'd achieved your career high with, that took the honesty of those two guys, Peter Siddle and Mitchell Johnson, for you to go and really reflect on the decision you were making.
Yeah, and that's how we were. That's how close we were, and we cared deeply for each other, and they saw what it's not about every bowler saw, and there's no doubt about that. But they saw, the stuff being taken out of my knee and how painful that was, and they'd see the scans at times that the physio would pull out and they just see things that they knew I was in pain and how much, it was sometimes a struggle to get up. But I always, as I said, I wanted to do it because I love what I did. And, I've spoken to, a lot of people about it who question me, how did you keep doing it? How did you get injured and then come back? Well, I did it because I wanted to. And that's what we do as athletes. You go through the hard yards and make those tough decisions and spend hours rehabbing and hours in the gym because you want to get back to do something that you love so much. And, I think I did a talk a couple of weeks ago and spoke about a similar thing. And the reason why I did, I said, I've bowled the first ball in a Boxing Day test, for instance, in an Ashes series. Like I said to him, go and find something that's better than that. It's something that you dream of doing. You have every opportunity to do it. You try and do everything you can to do it. And I did. And I got everything out of my body that I could, and then it just, as I said, what happened that day in Kent could have happened 4 years before, and I wouldn't have had half the opportunity, or more than half the opportunity, to do it. So I loved every minute of it. Of course, we wanted to do it for longer, but it is what it is, and I had a great career.
Just as a final thought, you played 27 tests and took 113 wickets. Of those 27, 12 of them were Ashes tests. And of your 113 wickets, 57 of them were Ashes wickets. So more than half of your test wickets were in Ashes tests. Of bowlers who have taken 50 Ashes wickets, your average is 20.63. Since the year 1900, only Jim Laker and Rodney Hogg have a better Ashes average. And in the same time period, only Mitchell Johnson, funnily enough, has a better strike rate than yours of 43.3. So you said, you wished you'd played more, but what you achieved in that time and what you achieved in Ashes cricket, I mean, you wouldn't swap that for a longer Test career, would you?
No, not at all. Oh well, not really. I mean, when you talk about, yes, I'd love to have played more Tests, no doubt. But again, when you say that, it always felt when I timed it right that when I wasn't injured, it was an Ashes series. And I played 2.5 series, one away or half of one at home, away and then home again. Again, the dream was watching Ashes cricket to play it as a kid, and you're right. I wouldn't. I mean that when you go through, I don't look at stats and records like that. But when you look at that, it was, as I said, I had a great career. I loved every minute of it. And would love to have played 70, or 50. But again, what I did, as I said, I got the most out of what I did, and had a bit of an impact as well along the way, which is again reason why you do it. You do it with your team, and we did that. We had a great time through that period. Had a tough time in 2010, tough time in 2013, but we were able to rectify it. And I guess that's the only disappointing thing, is that going back to 2015, that was the tour that we thought we were going to hopefully win it, but it didn't happen.